All right, so finally, we have consensus on the minimum wage figure. It's 70,000 naira. We're waiting approval, definitely from the Senate at this time. But let's get an outlook for the macros. Joining us for this is Dr. Afolabi Olowokere. He's a chief economist, analyst, and data services and resources. Joining me via Zoom. Great to have you on the show.
Good morning, Ladi.
Good morning.
Good morning to our viewers.
So I guess we should be excited, I think, at this time. But going by the exchange rate, with the minimum wage in dollar terms, I think we're about $44 going by the exchange rate close for the official window. That's about $44 in dollar terms. So we see it's rising in naira terms, but still reducing when converted to dollars. So we moved from about $64 in Obasanjo's government, $120 in President Goodluck Jonathan's government. That's if you go by that exchange rate. Then $60 in President Buhari's tenure, and now we're at about $44. So currency devaluation seems to be hurting the average worker, so much. How are you seeing this?
Yes, so yeah, you're right. I think the first thing is that we are happy. There is an agreement already. I mean, that's something very important for us to celebrate. Labor is an important aspect of the production process. So if labor is not happy, if labor is on strike, I mean, a lot of things will be on strike in the country. So we are happy that they finally, even though there was a wide margin starting from about 600.
I'm so sorry, I have to interrupt you right now. Just hold your thoughts. For now, we're going to be joining a live coverage of the funeral service of Chief Mrs. Florence Morenike Saraki. That's going to be going on our DSTV, but other platforms we're still going to be on right here. That's talking about business morning on Sunrise Day. So I'm so sorry to interrupt you, Dr. Olowokere, so you can continue with your thoughts now.
Okay, so we celebrate. I mean, even though we know it was a wide margin, 600, 400, 250, now 62, then 70,000. So that is very important for us that Labour finally agrees to something. And also what is also important is that the federal government now says we are going to do this more often. We are going to invest in CNG. We are going to look at factors that are also increasing cost of living and try to bring them down. And I think that's are some of the reasons why Labour tried to agree with what the federal government is. Also trying to understand the current situation that the country is. So you are right. If you look at it in dollar terms, it's actually falling. So what does that tell us? Two things are majorly the problem: inflation and exchange rate. Both of them are not mutually exclusive. There is a direct relationship between the two of them, especially over the long run. If you have high inflation environment, you are going to have a depreciating currency. So going forward, it will be very important for us to be able to rein in inflation and also to some extent be able to do something about exchange rate. There are different arguments that we need a depreciating currency so that we can export more. That's very important in economics, but also from our understanding in the country, we also know that depreciation of the currency also harms labor. As you said, there was a time when our minimum wage was close to about we are at $25, we moved to $53, we moved to $116. In 2018, we moved to $98. Before this, we already moved to about $20. Now we are back to $44. So what is important is that depreciation of the currency is harming labor or harming the purchasing power of people in the country, and something has to be done on that. I mean, governments should do something about the currency that is actually depreciated. But it's better than nothing, right? So if you are saying we are in 44, it is falling, but we are actually in 20 about yesterday until they agree. So from 20 to $44, that will say something for now. But going forward, as I said, we need to start talking about what are the things that are increasing the cost of living to an average Nigerian. If it is energy, if it is power, if it is transportation, if it is cost of food, what can we do about them such that labor doesn't have to spend a lot of money on this, then they have money to spend on other things in life that can improve the welfare of the citizens. Purchasing power of people will fall when prices are rising, when currencies are depreciating, and when the value of the money they are earning is low. Now that we have increased it, we also need to do something about inflation so
Right.
that we don't start having high inflation environment and depreciating currency.
Now we've also, heard from some experts saying that, obviously minimum wage increase would also lead to an increase in a further increase in inflation. So I'm wondering, are we compounding the issues now for the central bank at this point? But we have a comparison with the minimum wage and PMS per liter at this time. How much per liter of PMS can the minimum wage purchase? We have that from StatisCents at this time. In 1999, you could get about 150 liters for 3,000 naira. And coming all the way to 2024, we have 70,000 naira, and that can get you about 93 liters of PMS. So looking at the economy at this point, it should be easy for the economy to absorb a 70K minimum wage, don't you think?
Yeah, so I think the economy can absorb it. If we want to argue that the economy may not be able to absorb it, it's like saying that wages should not be increased. And I'm sure no labor will agree with us on that argument. Economics is very important, but we also have to consider the social aspect of life of people. Definitely, increasing wage rates will have some inflationary impact. The evidence has always been that it will increase inflation to some extent. After some months, inflation rates will come back a bit, but may not come back to the level at which they start. So let's just take an example. Let's assume the current inflation rate is 34%. Increasing wage rates will probably take it to about, all other things being equal, because central bank is also trying to do a lot of things to reduce inflation, and they are also government is trying to bring in good importation. Or those are different impacts, so that those one can also moderate inflation. But let's assume all other things being equal, that inflation is 34%. Increasing minimum wage may probably take it about 36, 37%. But after about 4 or 5 months, you can then be back to not 34%, but 35%. So what does that mean? If you have this kind of injection, it takes prices up because people have a lot of money and they start consuming more than they used to consume. Prices can then go up, especially for manufacturers who were not able to increase their prices because some of the things they were selling were not essential commodities or things that people buy as their income are challenged. So inflation will definitely rise a bit, but it will definitely also come back down, especially if you also look at other factors that are coming at it. And another thing is that you don't just take the price of a commodity like petrol or how much a coke is sold for, how much they are selling apple to determine the welfare of people. The reason is that it has to be a basket of commodity that people consume. And also, not only basket, because people substitute if prices of fish go up, they substitute to meat. The price of meat go up, they substitute to other alternatives. So there are always substitution the way consumers allocate their expenditure and spending.
Right, and talking about that basket, I'm pretty sure that basket would have seen a lot of changes if we're actually using the basket, but it's quite interesting how things have changed. The 3,000 naira minimum wage in 1999 could actually get you 150 liters of PMS. Fast forward all to 2024, and it's just 93 liters, even at 70,000. Now, that's data from StatisCents there, but there's also debt. At this point, we got the data there. We see external debt sitting at 56 trillion. Domestic debt, 65.65 trillion. Total debt at Q1, that was about 121 trillion naira. And definitely, we see debt rising, at this point. How much would this add to our debt level, getting minimum wage to 70,000 naira?
That's a big question. But ideally, we are not supposed to be borrowing for consumption. Ideally, even though sometimes we can't run away from that fact. So let's look at what we currently do. Before now, we probably will have a deficit of about 5 trillion. And then we have capital expenditure of about 2 or 3 trillion. That means about 2 trillion or more additional borrowing that probably are going into recurrent expenditure. What has been done in 2024 budget was to have a capital expenditure of about 9.99 trillion, which is close to 10 trillion, and a deficit of about 9 trillion. In other words, maybe some of those ills or challenges we've tried to correct them. So what is the point? The point is that try as much as possible not to borrow for consumption. The current expenditure, even though they are very important, but try not to borrow for them. Make sure that your revenue is able to at least cover what you spend on statutory expenditure, statutory transfer, what you spend on recurrent debt and recurrent non-debt. And then if at all you must borrow, try as much as possible to borrow for capital projects. But that is not our experience. We recently did an analysis and showed that most of our borrowings are not only for capital, because capital is far less than what we borrow. A lot of them also go into statutory transfer, into debt servicing, and also into recurrent expenditure in terms of personnel costs and overhead. So, to your point, whether increase the minimum wage will increase our debt level, it is not supposed to, if we have followed that arrangement of borrowing only for capital. But because we also borrow for recurrent, definitely this will also contribute to our debt level, except we are able to increase our level of revenue, which is also a function of many factors: global development, prices of oil, the capacity of government to even tax the domestic economy. Government is trying to do a lot with that, but the economy is still fragile. COVID effect is still around. So I agree with you. Indirectly, because money is fungible, this will have some impact on our debt level, especially when you look at the subnational government. How many of them can pay? If they are forced to pay, does that mean that a state can borrow more, even though that is not a good route, such that it can be able to pay high salary? But I think as time goes on, government will try as much as to see how it can increase its revenue, which also implies that the private sector should get ready to pay higher taxes for government to be able to maintain its fiscal balance.
All right, there you have it. Don't borrow for recurrent expenditure. Thank you so much. Always great having your perspective. Dr. Afolabi Olowokere is the Chief Economist, Analyst Data Services and Resources. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, and good morning to you.